Very good morning, Nikita, and I'm really thankful that you agreed to do this interview for our research on women in architecture. The research is mainly about doing the biographical note of women architects who have been doing research, education, or architecture practice. And I'm going to take you through some questions to take you back to your childhood and your college life and what you are doing today. And I hope you agreed that you will be recorded for this interview, as well as the recording will be published there. So I will start the interview after a while, after I really give you a short note on what women in architecture is about. I assume you have studied here from India and now you are in Carolina. So you have the experience of both sides of the world. So I think it will be very enriching experience. So may I ask you some questions and go for the recording over it?
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Mansee. And yeah, you can start. The pleasure is mine.
Thank you so much. So we would like to start with a very simple question, as in how was it in your childhood and high school, which actually moved you to study architecture? Was it an intended, was it just flowing, or was it inspired by somebody? How was it? When did you and why did you enter architecture?
Well, I actually come from a family of a lot of creative people, right? From my grandmother, my uncles, my aunts. So they were artists, they were architects. So I had a very, I would say, a creative childhood, because with creative people, you tend to see people who are creative. And that is something which led me to I think, appreciate architecture. And as I grew up, my dad was in a transferable job. So we moved from one city to another. So I was born in MP. And then after a few years, we moved to Mumbai, stayed there for some time, moved to Chennai, lived there for a few years. And after that, moved to a very small town in Karnataka, that was Bhadravati. And I think having creativity in your genes leads to observation. I was a very keen observer. So when I moved from one place to another, I would observe different buildings and the way different cities were. And I would have a ton of questions, like why this is this way. Because in Mumbai, it's like very fast and you see all these high-rise buildings. And then we moved into a very small part of Chennai where it's totally different. And that was one where you observe a lot of things, you get dragged on or drawn upon why things are different in different places. And adding to that, I had my cousins and my uncles who were already architects.
Okay. So you were living in that environment.
Yeah, I had this environment where usually we lived in south of India, and my relatives, like I'm from the north, and every summer we would travel to my grandparents' house. So when I would go there, I would go to my mama is an architect in Indore. So I would go to his office, sit there, and then I would go to sites with him. And I would be I would love the way things like turn up, because you see something that is being built, and then you go after some time. Like we would travel every 6 months. So then after 6 months, I would be so curious to see how it has turned out. So, I think that was mainly how I always wanted to be an architect. Even as a little kid, I would say that I want to be an architect. My grandfather was very much against it, because I was very good in math and science, and they always expected me to take that field. And during that time, there was a lot of the technology boom, and
yes, IT.
so I got a very good percentage. My CET ranking was, I could get into any college and take any course. and everybody was like, why are you doing architecture? You can just get into computer science, so you can get you will not believe I got a 96%. And when I chose architecture, everybody in my place was so surprised. They're
It was
like,
bit on the lower side of percentages. I do remember
yes,
even in
uh,
my age group.
yes, because I finished my 12th in 91. So during that time, it was like if you don't get into any of the other engineering courses and your ranking is low, the only
Yeah,
option you have is to get into architecture.
architecture,
So it
yes.
was like, I think most people took up architecture not voluntarily, just they took up because they couldn't get into any other course. So for me, it was very different when I chose architecture. Everybody was um, not so happy, but that is what I wanted to do. And yeah, I think I loved every bit of it because it
Nice.
was my choice. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. But it also shows that there was certain level of independence provided to you, because you know that the background is talking about being woman in the field. So you
Hmm.
had the choice to really take it. Either you were somehow you managed to convince everybody, but
Yes.
people
Yes.
heard you in the house. That's important. You
Yes. I put my foot down.
Yeah. So where was your early education, bachelor's, and how were you really seeing architecture once you were into it? Because you already mentioned that you had already a good exposure of the field, and I assume as a child, seeing your acquaintances and family members in that commanding position to construct something and build, and things coming up, and that they have some say in doing something in the society. What was your experience in when you were doing architecture studies? And did you feel the gender difference in architecture, or was it very easy going? Because as teacher, I also know that we really don't make so much of gender difference. And did you feel that you are basically a woman in the field, or it was just very easy in architectural education?
Well, I did my bachelor's from Malnad College of Engineering in Hassan. That's a small town which is about 400 kilometers from Bangalore. And I think during our time, we had a 50-50.
Yes.
Yes, so there were equal amount of girls as were boys. And there was no gender
Yes.
difference as such, because
In
I
fact,
think when there's minority, that is when you
yes,
feel
you
that
feel it.
you're biased. But then I think we were more girls. I think it was equal, just one or two here and there.
Yeah.
But so it was almost a balance. So we
And
didn't
then
have.
girls do better. Girls do better in the class. That's also an observation,
Yes,
especially in
yeah.
assignments. And, I mean, in my class, we were all like top 4, 5, up to 7 were all girls. And then boys ka number aata tha. So that was very interesting. But number wise, we were same. But still,
Yes,
I mean, class performance, it mattered. So
yeah.
when you were doing your undergraduate and coming towards the final year, were you already thinking what to do, what not to do, and what will be the next course of life? Or were you already planning how you are going to take up things? Because I will use the word privilege, because having people from the field in the house itself makes it easier, unlike what people like us who had experienced in that. So how was it going in the final year? Was there a discussion what next, or were you going to go for higher studies or practice, or already working on projects? What was it?
I did my internship in Pondicherry under a French architect, and that was a very different kind of experience because I got introduced to a lot of things that are usually not theoretical, because professional practice is something where
Yeah.
I think you learn a lot than what you do in your educational during your college life. So then I decided to work for some time. Higher education was put aside because I really loved to do something on my own, and practice was something that I wanted to do. And so by then I had 2 other cousins who were doing in Hyderabad. I had 1 more cousin. So he would say we should have something that we all
I think the network has problem, huh?
So it should be north, south, east, west. I think it just I think it just got disconnected. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, but in last sentence had a lot of disturbance, huh? So we will cut it. Maybe you can please repeat.
Yeah, it just froze. Your screen froze.
It's frozen again, huh?
Okay.
So we'll have to check.
Yeah, I think it's coming on and off.
Yeah, let's check. Okay. Maybe we can continue and we will frame it. No problem.
Okay. All right.
So you were talking about your experience that you wanted to really work on practice, not do
higher studies. Yeah.
Please
And
continue.
since I already had cousins working, we were planning to do things together, and we had this notion of starting collectively something and spreading it across India.
Very nice, very nice. So from there, from your early career, how did you slip into the family mode? And I mean, in family mode, of course, in India, we talk about marriage and moving because that's an integral part of family mode in India. Women have to move somewhere, you know.
Yes.
So when you started in your early career, I really want to know, when did you really realize that you are a woman in the profession, and it is different about being woman, and it is different being just as a person. But you can frame it along with the family. But then, how did you slip into the family mode, and how are you balancing family life? And we really don't ask personal questions, but still we just want to get a feel of it, you know.
Yeah, I do understand. I met my husband during college, so it was like 5 years of courtship, and then we decided to get married. And during those times, love marriage is something which is not accepted by everyone, and he was from, we didn't have an option. The moment we graduated, we had to get married, otherwise it was getting difficult. So just immediately after we graduated, we got married because our parents were not ready to accept. And I think we got married in 1999, and then we wanted to have a millennium baby. So it was like we decided to have one. So everything was set aside. And then, yeah, I got busy with that. So my son was born in 2000, and we were still practicing. We wanted to get a little experience working under architects. And that during that time, Bangalore was like the hub for everybody in Karnataka. Yes. So anybody studying anywhere, once they finished graduation, would move to Bangalore because that was most happening. And there were a lot of opportunities to work there. So we moved to Bangalore and we worked. My husband's also an architect. So both of us were working under different architects, and we wanted to get a feel of, once you finish your education, what is it that is really happening on ground? Yes. So we worked for a year, and with a little baby, we were trying to balance a lot of things. I took a break after that for a year because I did want to spend time with him. My husband continued work. And after I got back, I didn't want to work under somebody. We always wanted to start something on our own. Although little, I think that's inbuilt in you that you want to.
Yes, I think that's also training. That's how the architecture training happens. We are trained more to practice, which I'm also questioning, by the way, being a teacher, researcher. It's a wrong notion, but yes, we were built like that in the pedagogy.
Yes. I know. I think you just get a little experience, and then you think that it's time that you have freedom of thought, because when you're working with somebody, there's always a clash. Like two different people will always have two different views or two different perspectives. So starting something on our own was always on the mind, and we had to balance finances. So we decided one of us would start practicing and the other would work for somebody. So my husband continued work. We did that for 1 or 2 years, but things were getting a little difficult. Because we were kicked out of the house with a small baby. We were not able to manage with what little stipend we would get, or most of the projects were done free of cost, because when
that's an early career problem with all architects.
Yes,
really. It takes nearly 7 years to find something where people will start paying you. Otherwise, you just keep doing things, you know.
Yes. So when things got a little difficult, we said one of us have to move out, because we have to survive. That's your sole purpose at that moment. So we had to survive. So we both took up. IT was then booming, so that was the only field that we could switch upon. So we said, okay, both of us do different courses. The one who finds a job first in IT would move to IT. The second one would still continue architecture. So both of us did courses. My husband took up Java. I took up Oracle. We wanted to shift because it was difficult to live a life. Cost of living was too high in Bangalore. So it was. Then he moved and I got the opportunity to stick to architecture. I would say lucky me, because he still repents moving out, although by profession he was
there is network issue at our end.
He's always been an architect and he's always been supportive, but then he cannot 100%. Things got busier. It was difficult for him to give his 100% again.
So he got the job first, or you got the job first?
Yes,
he got it. He got first. So that was straight away to US or somewhere else?
No, it was in Bangalore. It was in Bangalore. So he got into IT and I stuck with architecture. So we started practicing, and he would. It was like he would be a weekend software tech. So we did a lot of projects where he could help me out during weekends, but most of the work was done by me, because it was difficult for him to give that kind of time, and that was getting a little difficult.
So site, going to site was all your activity?
Initially, I would always go with him, because at that time we were doing projects which were mostly outskirts of Bangalore. So a lot of activities were happening outside, because that was when Bangalore was growing. Yeah, it was growing, and most of our projects were really away from town. And I think it was very difficult for me to be going all the way to a place where you don't have anything around. It was just so secluded with just the workers working there. So it was not very safe for me to go alone. So initially, I think the first few years, all the site visits, I would always go with him. And it would happen during the weekends, because that was only when he was free. I remember we would start at 6 in the morning. I would pack my dabbas, because we would go from one site to another. So it would be like a whole day activity. You start at 6 and you go to this site, then traveling itself would be 1.5, 2 hours from one site to another.
Yeah.
So we would pack our breakfast, our lunch and dinner or snacks, and then move from one site to another. I still remember my little one, we didn't have a place to leave him. So we would drag him around to all the sites.
Wow.
He would play in the foundations because he would get so bored. So for him, it was like a maze. And I would just leave him there and I would say, okay, you just make yourself comfortable. And he would play with the sand and mud and blocks. And he would get himself involved in all that. And we would stay on site for some time and then clear all the doubts and move from one to another. So initially it was always with him, but after a while it became difficult for him because there were times when he got busy during weekends and he couldn't make it and we couldn't postpone it, that there was this dire urgency that something is not right. And then I said, yeah, I have to take, the certain steps that you need to take, and you have to, I was forced to do it alone. So I think it was just that sometimes you don't have a choice, you just do it. So I started doing it alone. And then slowly, because it was already 3-4 years, I had that confidence. So I would be able to manage. So I would always have somebody with me, somebody whom I know, so that I don't go into a place where it's just the work.
The back of the mind, being woman is always there, huh? When we go
Always,
to this place.
always. Especially when you're going to certain sites where there's nothing around. So it would be scary. Psychologically, you're always worried, and you listen to stories where, there are so many things going wrong. So it's always better to stay safe. So thankfully, I had my office boy who became my driver later on. And I would say in a few years, he was almost like a site engineer. He would know how to take measurements. He would know how to convey certain things. And he would be like my bodyguard wherever I would go. And he would carry the tape and he would know how to make notes. And being with me and going with me to so many sites and listening to conversations or seeing me take measurements, he became so equipped. I didn't have to train him. So he was like a bodyguard.
Yeah. So did you feel did you feel because when you started working solo that somewhere being a woman and practicing solo was kind of a blessing in disguise, because you were the boss there? Because we have discussed with other architects also, and we do see the difference when you have a spouse who is also practicing and who gets the benefit of the doubt to be the boss. And I have also experienced that in my own life. So probably, I mean, you rightly said that it's not planned, but it just happened. But I can also tell you that it's a blessing in disguise that you are taken as a boss. Then you are not a subordinate, visiting somebody. So you can see the positive side of it. When we are looking back, you can always look at the positive side of it, Okay, so as you were talking about this life-changing moment when you had to really take this decision that you have to deviate from the profession, but at the same time, you chose to keep one foot on it. So as two of you, so it's good to see that you could decide that between two of you, and you could do architecture in your own terms now, and more as a boss. I see the difference, because when you were in that stage, I was still together. So as I said, I'm trying to look at reflections, how people really changed and deviated. So tell me what kind of work you were engaged in, and then what else happened that you had to further move forward and take more decisions, Because from Bangalore, you went to Carolina. So now it's an interesting thing where things changed further. And what kind of...
as I said, we started practicing very soon. And initially, most projects were all done free of cost because you wanted the experience, you want the name. And it was a new city for us where we didn't know many people then. It was just friends and like childhood friends and college friends who all moved there because more opportunities were there. So through them, we would get some projects, and we started with a partnership with one of my dad's friends, where he was doing some small projects, and it was easy for me because I knew him personally, and it was convenient because my husband was not very um, I think there is that trust factor where you know somebody and you work with them than working with a complete stranger.
Yes.
That kicked off, and we did a lot of projects together. It was easier for me to coordinate with him since we knew each other, and it wasn't difficult on sites mainly. But when I started doing projects where I didn't know people, it was like a completely different contractor. Um, there are always differences between an architect and a contractor, right? So
Yes, absolutely.
always,
And then
always
contractors
arguments
are
on
men.
site. Yes.
I'm yet to look for a woman contractor in the country, or believe me.
Yes. So there is always that, and the client is always there's a tug of war for him. Should he listen to the contractor or should he listen to the architect? So usually with being a woman, I think we are at a disadvantage there because um, they are there on site most of the time and they interact with the client most of the time, unlike you where you go only just on certain like
Yes.
there is roofing or there is, you just don't go to sites every other day. So their interaction is much more than what is between you and the client, and their influence is
Is
more
more.
on them. For me, I was at a greater disadvantage because I'm very short, and
You bring an
one is being
important
a woman
aspect.
and
Huh?
being shorter was like double disadvantage, and they would never
I
take
can
me
relate
seriously.
that. I can relate that. And that was one of the questions which was coming actually. Yes, that women who are well built are taken very differently by men in the society than women
Yes,
who are lean and short, and you know.
yes,
And then there
yeah,
are these layers of color and all kinds of these physical,
yes,
aspects. So you
yes.
bring an interesting aspect thing. But this tussle with the contractor is here to stay, or do you think they are more listening? How did you experience in your time? It's just the competition, I guess. I think because they have also more grip, grip to the project. They
Yes,
handle material, they handle the labor, and owners are always concerned कि contractor भाग गया तो project कैसे
yes,
होगा? Architect भाग गया तो they have everything with
yeah,
them, ना?
yeah,
So that's a disadvantaged position other than being women also, you know. So
yes,
client will be also a little bit more inclined towards contractor.
yes, yeah, absolutely right. And they have a better say because we were at that time just freshers where
Ah,
you
and
don't look very experienced. You actually don't have experience,
ah,
and the client is not wrong in doubting you because he
absolutely.
obviously looks at the contractor who's much more wiser and has more experience, and he talks with confidence, and
And
I
in
think
local
that is very
language,
important. Yes, in the
local
local
language
language.
and nitty-gritties, you know,
Yes,
yes, I
yes,
can relate that.
yeah. And for me it was I was never taken seriously, so the best strategy I would use was to hire my tone. So only when you shout, you're heard. If you just talk softly,
Louder.
if you mute, you don't. So after a couple of years, my tone was so it became like I was
Naturally
always
high.
speaking a higher tone, and my husband would always say, "You're not on site. You're at home." He would always use that because I was so used to speaking that tone that it became natural to me
Natural.
that I could never speak in a low
You
slowly
want
or
to get the work done with a higher volume.
yes, yes. And I would want to see, hear me out. This is what I'm saying. You better listen to me. So that was the only way it worked was with shouting. So you automatically, to make yourself hear or make yourself taken seriously, I had to do that. So I think
Yeah.
I had a lot of problems with contractors, and then there was a time when it was getting too much, and I decided that if I'm doing projects, I'm having my own people, I'm having my own contractors. So that was a transition from when we from just designing, we moved into design and construction. So after we had enough experience, and I had a couple of contractors whom I was very comfortable working with. So I said, I need to form my own team, and I would take projects where I'm in charge of design and construction both.
And
So
construction.
that was the next step, because when things started getting difficult, I said, it is getting too much. It was so stressful for me. So I was not concentrating on designing. The concentration was
That the,
management, the
on the site and with
managing
the
the
client.
sites, because you don't have time. Yeah, there's so much confusion. There is every other day I have to go to site because he would have gone and changed something, and then I have to go back there to convince the client that this is not what is there on paper. He's doing something on his own. So with all that, we decided that we will move into construction, so my own team. And further on, it was very easy because they knew me, and they would listen to me, and they worked for
Yeah.
me. So they dare not say anything against
Yeah.
me, or
So
they
it's
dare,
like your staff then, so almost like
they
your
didn't
staff, but of
have
course
that
independent.
liberty of, yes. Although it was very tasking, I would say, because I was in charge of, it was just not being an architect then. I was in charge of materials, I was in charge of timelines. Then, other than being the architect, you be everything other than the
People
architect.
management as well, apart
Yes.
from the design management.
Labor management.
Labor
Labor
management.
management was
Yes.
so difficult.
Material management. So everything
Yes.
together. Yeah.
So
So
it became a little
yeah,
difficult.
you were talking about these physical aspects of being woman, which may come handy, and you have experienced things like being lean and short is a
Yeah.
disadvantage. But what
Yes.
kind of psychological aspects do you think that we experience when we are practicing as an architect? That there are moments when people tend to make you realize that, come on, you are a woman. They don't
Mhm.
say it on face, but
Yes.
it happens very often I mean, it all happens even in academics, in research, by the way. So it's not only on the field. So
Yes.
did
Yeah.
you see that there was this silent game, which was, it was there implicit, that okay, this lady has
Always.
arrived, always
Yes.
there.
Always. Yeah. I still remember going on sites and finding it very difficult at times to reach certain places for inspection. For example, when the roofing is done, you want to get on, and if it is just a one floor house, to get on to check whether everything is done as per design, or you have certain details on the terrace which you want to cross check before the concreting happens. It was very difficult. The kind of arrangements that are made are always made with respect to men
Men,
in mind.
हाँ वो
It's
सीढ़ी
easy for
लगा
them.
देंगे. हाँ.
हाँ सीढ़ी लगा देंगे, no rungs in between. They're tall and they can manage. Like there's a broken ladder. I don't want to be on site, get on something and break my arm or
Break.
leg.
हाँ.
So it used to be very difficult, and I would always see that as a disadvantage, because they would say, it's okay, ma'am, we've done
आप
everything. You
नीचे ही
don't
रहो.
have to get
हाँ.
on there. You don't need to. We have the structural engineer, he will get on, or the site engineer will get on and give you tell you that things are done as per design. But at times I said, although they convinced me that it was there, I want to go there and check it for myself. And later on I started making it compulsory on projects that I do, that things are properly in place for me to get on. So they
Yeah.
would make sure that, ha, ma'am aa rahi hai, so you have to put a proper CD there, or make arrangements that I can get on to places where I want to inspect
The site
something.
visits become sometimes difficult, like when we have even topographical sites and all. Then
Yes.
at some point you will be asked. Of course, you have not faced that being at the leading position, but because we are talking about these challenging aspects, but we also realize that there are some opportunities also of being women. and
Mhm.
how, and we also know the art of exercising those opportunities,
Yes,
in the profession.
yes.
Can you tell something about that?
I think we are, as women, there are certain inherent qualities that we have which make us very apt for being an architect. I think every woman is an architect, in
Yes,
spite of not having
yes,
the
by
education.
default.
She has that basic instincts in her. So if you look at a house, it's usually women who keep it. They know what to look for, how to keep it. So that quality is already there in us. And when we are designing for somebody else, I think we are much better listeners. We
Yeah,
understand
I
and we are
think you nailed it.
empathetic. So we listen, we make a note of what the client wants. So in terms of
Rather than retelling.
understanding, yes, understanding their requirements, I think we are better listeners. We are more flexible in terms of design. We don't try to push our ideas onto
Yeah.
a client. We listen to them and we try to be flexible in trying to giving them the best of everything. We don't say, oh, this cannot be done. We don't we are not stubborn. We are very flexible in
Flexible. I
terms
think
of
that's also strength,
yes.
because from our studies we have also found that this whole flexibility, which is an inherent characteristic of women, also actually allowed women to venture into different avenues.
Yes.
That women
Mhm.
are not sticking to only doing architecture as a profession. They become activists, they become writers, they become
Yeah.
researchers. So they are also open to take risks as well. Uh,
Yes.
venture new ideas and new projects or new avenues, I will say, because
Hmm.
they are more flexible. It's not only in design reflection, but it also reflects in the of life, taking decisions and like
Yes.
switching off and switching on. And that's
Mhm.
also part of flexibility. In the same day, you have to take care of the family, and then you have to switch
Yes.
off and get to the professional mode and back to family. I think
Yes.
that is an inherent advantage women do have.
Yes.
But now I have some tricky question. One tricky question actually. The rest of things are very easy. We are nearing the end of the conversation, as you saw that it's quite a comfortable conversation. But
Mhm.
I want to know if there was a situation that women architects were more in numbers, as you rightly mentioned, that women are inherently and genetically architects,
Mhm.
whether to do their house, and then
Yes.
that gets extended professionally. So I want
Yes.
you to imagine a situation that in a city, more architects are women
Mhm.
as a practitioner.
Okay.
Then you see how the cities will look. First of all, do you think the cities will look different? And
Mhm.
then how it will look if there are more women architects who are leading, and just reverse the situation. So all
Okay.
famous architects are women, and more number of women practitioners. And right now, by the way, in teaching, women are more in India
Yes.
at least. So if we have to focus more on that, their decisions matter in the city. So how
Mhm.
will our cities be different? And will it be different or not? Both, of course, you have to tell me.
I'm sure it'll be different because right now what we see is most of the people engaged in city planning and urban design are men, where you have very few
Decision
people who
making.
are, yes, like anybody, like from the government to the public organizations to all the planning people are mostly the majority are men. So I'm sure it would be a very different a totally different scenario if women started designing cities. I just finished my urban design. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to practice because we moved to the US after that.
I was going to ask.
But I would feel that if women were given, the magic wand to design cities, it would be much more livelier. It would be much more safer. Right now, I think safety is something that I'm always paranoid about. That is
That's also being woman, huh?
yes, that is something that is not kept in mind when we are designing urban centers, downtowns, or even a very small aspect as a park. It
Yeah.
is, if you walk into a park and see, you would find girls in one little corner, and you would have most of the boys who are running around. So I think right from that little park to a bigger city, it would be much more safer if women designed it, and much more convenient for people to travel. I think even walking on the road, or having a stroller to take your kid around, or these little details would be concentrated more upon when women would design, because that is something that we experience every day.
Then
And I feel the difference, the design approach between how a woman and a man uh, we usually have a, I would say, a bottom up approach, and men have a top down
top
approach.
down,
So
absolutely.
they just look at the
The broad
overall
picture,
view.
huh?
Yeah, they just look at that, and that is where they start. But we start from the bottom. So we would start designing sidewalks before we start even thinking of street design. So it is a very different approach to design. And as women, I think we would concentrate more on these little details, which are very important, or which are not focused upon.
Yeah, so God lies in details anyway.
Yes.
God does not lie in big things. Even
Yes.
if you make big gods, it does not really make sense. But still, if we say that details are important, they will also encounter it with that if cities are economic engine and all those kind of, arguments. So somewhere
Hmm.
women have to also talk about it, because the points which you raised are very much the same points which most of the women architects we are talking to are raising.
Okay.
Safety, ecology, and these
Yeah.
details will be there, more livable, lively, and all those things.
Hmm.
How do we change it now? I mean, because cities are getting like this. Of course, now there are more women who are making their voice heard. Undoing city is an option, but again, it has to only come when women have those decision making. So you rightly mentioned magic wand. So just because we did not touch upon your journey, because you were still in Bangalore in your story.
Yes.
What changed that you landed up in North Carolina?
Okay. A lot of things changed. So as you mentioned, higher studies were always there in the back of my mind, but somehow setting up your own company and then moving from design to construction and then managing everything took almost 10 years. And
Wow.
after 10 years, yeah, we practiced, and we were doing projects, mostly residential. We got into other
Mm.
smaller urban design projects, and apartments, because that is when the apartment culture started off. So we
Yes.
moved to interiors. We were also doing a lot of research, trying to come up with something innovative. Our house was always we have a house there, and it was always something that when we don't have projects, we would be doing some experiment with our house. So anyhow, it was our own team. So if they are free, we would say, okay, we've thought about something, and the easiest client would be us. For me, it would be my
Yeah. So
husband, because he
laboratory,
decide everything. So we
laboratory.
started doing a lot of experiment and innovations in our own house. So after every 6 months, there would be some change. So we would do that. Then we were doing a lot of research, and that is when I bumped into one of my seniors, and that is how I started teaching, because I never had time for teaching. And I think luckily I didn't have a master's, but still, since he was my senior and with my years of experience, he gave me an opportunity to to teach. And I started teaching for almost 2 to 3 years. That is where I met Samya. She was my student. And I was trying to balance both. It was like not just both teaching, research, sites, design, and family, all that together. But I had a lot of help by then, since my husband was in IT. So there was enough financial stability that I could I could reject projects.
Yes.
I could come to a stage where if I'm not comfortable, I would not do a particular project. It was unlike initial stages of your journey where you just want anything that comes your way, you want to do it, because there are hardly any projects. There's so much competition. But then we came where if I would feel that they're giving me a free hand, they have confidence in me, only then I would do projects. Otherwise, I would just say, no, I'm not. And projects, then I really started enjoying to teach. And that is what led to me doing my master's. After 10 years of practice, I did my master's. So I was like the mom of the class, because everybody else in my class was just new. They were just freshers. And it was a very good experience. Urban design, I already had experience doing some projects, and that was something I wanted to do. So moved into urban design. And we moved to the US because of my husband and my children, because my older one wanted to study here. And then he was getting an opportunity to work here with the same company that he was in Bangalore. Although I didn't want to move, but then I also wanted to travel and experience, because after doing urban design, I realized it is very important for us
Yes.
to be able to experience the place. You read something about a particular place, but when you visit there and you experience
It's a
that
different
place,
thing.
it is something very different. And this came in as an opportunity, because uh, things were getting too monotonous in practice, because
Yes.
it's the same thing that you're doing. And teaching, although I was enjoying, I would have continued with it if I had stayed back there. But this came in as an opportunity, and I said, okay, I want to take this chance of moving here, staying here, experiencing the place, and then continuing research. So research is something that I wanted to do. And after moving here, the first 2 years, I took a break. I just wanted to travel, and
Yeah.
everything that we learned in urban design, I wanted to visit the High Line. I wanted to go to Boston, see the Quincy Market. So these things that you studied and looked and Googled are something that I wanted to see in person. So I've been doing that for 2.5, 3 years now, and then moved into research, where right now I'm doing something independently. And yeah, I have a lot of things on my cards. I want to write a book. I want to
Very
do a
nice.
lot of research. And I think
Ma'am, you're on mute.
I think that's why we have met now. Soumya, would you like to add something? Because I see you wrote in the chat box, but it would be good if you add few lines here.
Like, I think in our third year, architectural design, Nikitha ma'am was our architectural design studio coordinator. And we would have the 100% attendance in our classes, because it was not monotonous. It used to be very creative, and she used to bring out the creator inside us, and we had a lot of fun. I mean, she was a big inspiration and mentor to me.
my class used to be the loudest. Like Soumya knew because Ahmedabad college was very strict with attendance, and it was a typical architecture school run on engineering guidelines. When I started teaching there, I was so disappointed, and I would fight with the HOD saying that architecture is not taught this way. Architecture is where you need to have a free mind. If you set boundaries, then you're trying to curb their imagination. And I would have no boundaries or no restrictions in my classes, and everybody would be given. I would say that I want you to design something that is not real, because that is all you can do in college. Once you're you are
until
bound with
seriously, they have the liberty to make mistakes as well. So that we have to tell them. So it's interesting that how you moved from practice, where you, because of your family background, you were so inclined to do practice, and then you started enjoying education. And of course, now you are doing research. which also sums up that how women have taken different roles within architecture and not confined themselves to only doing the so-called practicing architect, you know. So I hope that we will definitely do some kind of research together also, and that's the reason I guess Soumya brought you and connected us. But I reached to the last question of our conversation here, and it's a very simple question for the future generation, and it is not a gender-biased future generation. So I'm just calling it future generation. What will be your message to the future generation to make it more women-inclusive profession? You know.
I think it depends on every individual, or I would say to the future generation, whether it's girls or boys.
Yes.
All you need to have is confidence in yourself. And that confidence has to be exuberated. Once you have the passion and the confidence, people will automatically listen to you, or people will then believe in you. So that is something which is very critical, because we as women ourselves don't have the confidence inside. You are so scared, you're trying to prove yourself, you're giving that 101% so that people recognize you. I think it is more important to have that confidence within first. So once you have that, it is seen in the field, it is seen when with people around.
Years, it will take years, 7 to 10 years to have that confidence, which is true for both. I mean, it's not for women only, it's true for both.
Yes, and I think as people who are successful should give more opportunities to women, because when I employed architects, I made sure everybody was, I would give preference to a woman application, because I as a woman would feel that if we don't encourage them, then we can't expect the men to do that. So I think we need to
also go gender bias, huh? We also go gender bias then.
We have to give them the opportunity. We should not doubt them, because when we could do it, mostly what happens is when you're trying to employ somebody or take in somebody under you, you would say, okay, if it is a guy, then he will not take leaves. I can send him to any site. I can do. You have that thought that a guy would be better than a girl. I think we should come out of that. It is proven that women can also do it. Women can also handle it if given a chance. We should be more confident. We should be more open to it and give them more opportunities. That is how I think we can balance it out and make sure that there are more. I'm not saying not have men architects or not.
Of course not. Even I don't believe in that, but have more women.
We should do that so that.
But you know, the striking thing is that intake into colleges and graduating numbers are same. So there is gender balance. So this is where we need to figure out. So something happens in between that we are thinking that there are lesser women architects practicing, and that's where even my hypothesis is saying that actually women are doing, but the way we define architecture makes it difficult for women to qualify as they are doing something, you know. So if they are, if for example you are into research now, will you be still called as a practicing architect, and then you are out of that whole fraternity, and that's where women a number counts less. This is also something which I realized while doing the research, that women are taking various routes, and that the very fact that they are more daring to change, daring to explore, and also they're flexible. Whether it is coming by no choice, or they also want to explore. Many a times it is by no choice, and then they just take different route, and but then I think this is where architecture itself needs to look at who is architect, what is architecture, and all. Should it be confined to making buildings? So that's a larger part of the research anyway. We can talk about it some other time and take it. Would you like to end the conversation with a short line on what kind of research you are working on, so that it also gets into our conversation here? Or what you're interested to work on?
This just happened by chance. after I moved here, I spent a little time understanding the ways of construction or how city planning works here. Unlike India, it is a very different approach. And visiting different types of cities and towns, I kind of understand that things are very different in between how it happens there and how it happens here. And I moved into a smaller suburb where uh, there's a lot of development happening. So this is actually a research triangle park where there are three major universities, which are very uh, the best universities in the US, one of the few good ones. And they connected this as a triangle. And then the city is designed along these three universities. So these things are, there are pockets that are coming around the universities for students who are coming here. And since there's a pool of research, college students, and a lot of literate population, a lot of companies are moving here. So there's opportunities to work. And then it is a modern day planning where they're trying to incorporate smart city concepts and trying to bring in a lot of new innovative ideas into how the city will grow. And my research is basically on a term called ethnoburb. This is something which is moving in circles now, where you have a minority, like we as Indians or Southeast Asians are minority here. But then there is this particular suburb where there is a lot of concentration of our people from Southeast Asia, and how they are trying to change the entire way the city is developing. So we have a lot of, as Indians, it's very important for us to give good education to children. So there are good development is happening around good schools. So the good school districts are where most of the Indians are buying houses. And then around these houses are most of the Indian businesses. Like 5 miles from my home, I have 5 Indian stores. I have a dozen Indian restaurants. I have a lot of these places where Indian classical dance is being taught, so which are majorly owned by Indians. And we have three different temples that have come in.
It's a town by itself.
So ethnoburb is a term which is given to a part of the city, or I would call a suburb, where you have a minority which has become a majority, and how it is changing the entire built environment of the city. So my research is basically on that, and I'm seeing how this place is transforming from when there were very few, the population was very few, to how it is growing and seeing more concentration of Indians here, and people who are not just economically getting wealthier, but then they are moving into political areas where we have our corporator who's an Indian. We have a lot of people who are involved in city planning, designing, and how they are trying to influence the growth of this particular suburb.
Reshaping the city, huh?
Yes.
So we hope to have a small India there also, like many places in the world.
Yes,
yes. Good. So we come to the end of this conversation. I hope you were comfortable answering all the questions, and we definitely learned from you. And a lot of patterns we can draw, which we have learned from previous women speakers. So further reinstating that there are certain things which are there in the society, or there are certain things which needs to be changed. So I would like to thank you on behalf of all the team, and really appreciate that you could give us time and share your wisdom as well as your experience of life. Thank you so much, Nikitha. And we hope to meet soon out of this recording, and of course we connect for other reasons. And please do take care.